Around the globe, every country has its fair share of unexplainable events and creepy mysteries. Though these are often debunked as hoaxes, or events that have logical explanations. But some of the world's scariest and strangest mysteries remain unsolved, and due to their odd nature, it seems very likely that they will remain that way forever. Number 5. The strange mystery of the disappearance of 18-year-old Zeb Quinn occurred on Sunday, the 2nd of January, 2000. Zeb was working in the electronics department at a Walmart in Asheville, North Carolina, and at around 9 p.m., his shift had ended. He had planned to meet up with one of his friends, Robert Jason Owens, after work, where the two would be looking at a car that Zeb was interested in buying. They met in the Walmart parking lot and each left in their own vehicle. They were seen in surveillance footage at a nearby gas station about 15 minutes later, where they were buying sodas. Owens later told police that after they left the gas station, Zeb signaled for him to pull over by flashing his car's headlights. He said that he had received a page and needed to make a phone call, so he left to find a payphone. About 10 minutes later, he returned and Owens described him as frantic, and Zeb canceled their plans to go look for a car. He was in such a rush that he rear-ended Owens' car as he tried to leave, but he apologized and drove away. In the early hours of the following morning, Owens was treated at a hospital after he had been in what he claimed was a second unrelated car accident. However, no accident report had been filed with the police. On the afternoon of the 3rd of January, Zeb's mother filed a missing persons report after she had repeatedly paged him with no response. He was supposed to work his next shift on the 4th, but didn't show up, and his supervisor, Patty King, received a call from someone claiming to be Zeb, saying that he was sick and couldn't come into work. She immediately knew it wasn't him and kept the caller on the line by asking him details about Zeb's shift. The caller couldn't answer any of her questions, and when the call was traced, it was found to have been made from a Volvo plant where Owens worked. Police questioned him, and he admitted to making the call, but told them that Zeb had asked him to call a favor. After giving his initial statement, Owens refused to further cooperate with police. When the page that Zeb had received was traced, it was found to have come from his aunt, but she denied having paged him. On the 6th of January, a former classmate of Zeb's phoned his mother to tell her that she had seen his car in the parking lot of a barbecue restaurant. Police found that the headlights were left on, and a pair of lips and an exclamation mark had been drawn in lipstick on the car's back windshield. They also found a plastic hotel key card, someone else's jacket, and a black Labrador mix puppy inside, which was eventually adopted by one of the investigators. Forensic evidence turned up no leads. 15 years later, investigators found fabric, leather, and unknown fragments under a layer of concrete on Owens' property. On the 10th of July, 2017, Owens was charged with ending Zeb's life and he is awaiting trial. Zeb's true fate, however, remains unknown. Number 4. Reporter J. Bernard Hutton and photographer Joachim Brandt were working for a German newspaper in 1932 when they were sent on an assignment to the Hamburg shipyard to cover a local story, and they inadvertently ended up in a real-life scary mystery. The creepy case started after Hutton had gathered enough information for a story, and Brandt had taken some photos, and the two men walked back to the shipyard exit gate. They both suddenly became aware of the sound of aircraft overhead, and as they looked up, the sky was full of RAF bomber warplanes. A few moments later, huge explosions erupted around them as the shipyard was bombed, and they were told by a security guard to vacate the area. As chaos ensued around them, Brandt managed to take a rapid series of photos before they made their way to safety. As they drove back to Hamburg city center, they became confused as the sky had returned to normal and everyone seemed to be going about their business, unaware of the attack. They looked back at the shipyard and found that it was in the same state as when they had arrived, with no damage whatsoever. Back at their office, Brandt's photos were developed and they showed nothing unusual. The shipyard appeared normal. Their editor phoned the shipyard and was told that nothing out of the ordinary had happened that day, and so their claims were dismissed. Just before the beginning of World War II, Hutton had moved to London, and in 1943, he saw a newspaper article about a successful air raid that had been carried out at the Hamburg shipyard. He studied the photos of the event and found that they showed the shipyard exactly as he and Brandt had witnessed it 11 years earlier, but their encounter remains a strange mystery. Number 3. On the 25th of September, 1981, 58-year-old Thelma Melton, better known as Polly, had traveled with her husband Bob and 2 friends to the Deep Creek Trail in the Smoky Mountains. She was very familiar with the area, as she'd been hiking the trail for the past 20 years. And on that day, Bob stayed behind in their Airstream trailer as the 3 others headed out. The trail was easygoing and wouldn't have posed much of a threat for the hikers. As they headed back to the hike at around 4 p.m., Polly suddenly picked up her pace and walked ahead of her friends. They saw her walk over a small hill and lost sight of her, but they assumed that they would see her back at the trailer. When they arrived back there at 4:30 p.m., however, she had not returned, and Bob stated that he hadn't seen her. The 2 friends returned to the area where they had last seen her, but she was nowhere to be found, and she was reported missing by 6 p.m. The following week, more than 150 people searched the area, with the help of 9 search dogs. At one point, one of the dogs alerted to a tree that had fallen over, and it's assumed that Polly had stopped there for a rest, but her scent wasn't picked up anywhere else, and no further trace of her was ever found. When police investigated her movements prior to her disappearance, they found that Polly had decided against going to her volunteer job that day, and on the previous day, she had made several phone calls from a work phone. She had never used the phones in the 4 years that she'd been volunteering there, and when police attempted to trace the calls, they were unable to do so. Some people have suggested that she was having an affair with another man, and that she disappeared of her own free will. Others think that she had planned to end her own life since her pastor stated that she was battling a bout of depression. This is all mere speculation, however, and Polly's disappearance has never been solved. Number 2. On the 8th of December, 1863, an 8-year-old boy named George Colin Albright was on the beach of Sandy Cove in Nova Scotia, Canada, when he stumbled upon a man suffering from exposure. He noticed that the man's legs had recently been amputated above the knees, and when he further examined it, it was found that the operation had been done by a skilled surgeon. Many people were intrigued by the strange case and came to see him, but they found that he didn't speak French, Latin, or Italian, and he remained silent. He was described as Mediterranean in appearance, and was noted that his hands were too soft for him to have been a manual laborer. He was taken in by local Acadians and received funds from the Nova Scotia government so that his needs would be taken care of. He was eventually named Jerome, since he was said to have uttered something similar when asked for his name on one occasion. Jerome ultimately went on to live with Jean Nicola, who spoke several languages, but he couldn't get the man to talk. He would remain there for the following 7 years, and following the passing of Jean's wife, he was sent to stay in a nearby town. Here, Jerome was put on show, and an admission fee was charged for members of the public to see it, with the family he'd been staying with living well off of his government stipend. He would end up staying there until his passing on the 15th of April 1912. It's been speculated that Jerome was a sailor who had mutinied and was left on Sandy Cove Beach after having his legs amputated as punishment. It's also been suggested that his difficulties with speech may have been the result of a damaged part of his brain that regulates speech, explaining why he was able to produce sounds but never spoke in any understandable language. His true identity and origin, however, remain shrouded in mystery. Number 1. RAF Flight Sergeant Roland Hughes was on a training mission over West Germany in 1952 when he flew into a scary unsolved mystery that was deemed credible enough to be investigated by a government minister. Papers revealed by the Churchill Archive at Cambridge University recount the tale of Hughes returning to base when he came into contact with an object that he described as a gleaming silver metallic disc that was highly reflective and absolutely seamless in appearance that flew alongside his plane. He estimated that the object measured around 100 feet across, about the wingspan of a Lancaster bomber. 3 fellow pilots who were flying the same mission failed to see the object since they were engaged in a banking turn and were not facing the same direction. The incident was confirmed by RAF radars that showed the object traveling at speeds far greater than any aircraft of the time was able to reach. Hughes reported the incident and was sent to the aviation minister, Duncan Sandys, to whom he recounted the incident. By the end of the briefing, Sandys was certain that the tale was true, and he went on to brief senior civil servants on the matter, telling the government's chief scientist, Lord Cherwell, that he deemed the evidence to be convincing. He is also cited in the Cambridge University document as stating, quote, "I have no doubt at all that Hughes saw a phenomenon similar to that described by numerous observers in the United States," referring to the well-known Foo Fighters sightings. After the encounter, Hughes was dubbed Saucer Sam by his fellow pilots, who painted a flying saucer on his plane. Hughes' son, Brian, says that their family knew about the sighting, but that his father didn't speak about the incident often and had to be prompted to recount the tale. Brian says his father once told him that, quote, "People think you're mad if you say you've seen a flying saucer. I've only ever seen one once. I've never seen one since." Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.